Okay, so in the interim, I made a mistake and ZBrush crashed on me. And then I made an entire movie and it failed. So forgot to hit save, so I lost that. So we're going to do this all again. And first we're going to make the UV, we're going to run UV Master. And then once we have the UVs set up and we know we can get back and forth into Cinema, we'll go through and do the reprojection. The way that Cinema 4D, UV Master works is the proper way to do it is to work on a clone. And so we're going to click, just select, make sure the model is selected. And you want to do this after you've done Z-Remesher and have good topology and you've inspected your topology. Click Work on Clone. And this is it. This is our original model over here. It's the first one we opened. So we're in this new model now, and normally symmetry will be turned on. Make sure that's turned off for an organic, non-symmetrical model like this. And all you have to do is hit unwrap. It's really pretty simple. I went through and in the interim did something. That's why the painting is on there. You can ignore that. So I'm going to hit flatten and look at my UVs. Those are my UV maps, which looks pretty good. And I can scale these to make sure they take up the optimum amount of space. And it's just like using the regular transform tools. You can take this flattened model and do whatever you want with it. And I'm just moving it in position and scaling it up so that it's as big as it can be. Making sure it's not bleeding over any of the edges and isn't too close to any of the edges at all. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm going to click unflatten. I'm going to click copy. I'm going to go back to our original model. Make sure it's the original model and click paste UVs. And I'm not going to... The reason it's hiding part of the model was that in the interim I went through and created a texture map and put it on there, and so it's not displaying properly, and that will be resolved when I go through and do the following. So now what you're going to do is you're going to want to make sure that now we're going to go through the process of saying, okay, now that this model has UVs, we want to apply a texture to those UVs, and a texture would just be something you could open in Photoshop, right? I want it to be 2048, although most everything we do now is 4096. I'm going to click 2048. Under texture map, I'm going to go through and say this won't look like this. This will be blank. I will say new from Polypaint, and you can see that's it. That's our model. Except I did something wrong. Texture maps need to be created at the highest resolution of the model, and displacement maps need to be created at the lowest. And I'm going to turn all these off. So when you open this, so when you bring it back in from UV Master, it will look like this. Just to recap, make sure that you click this to make sure the map size is set right. Then go through and take your model to the highest level of subdivision and say new from Polypaint. And it did that. Again, I painted on the model before, so it says on there ischial tuberosity. I did that in the last demo. Then go back down to the lowest subdivision, and I'm doing that with Shift D. Command D will divide. If you hit D, it will go up in subdivision levels. If you hit Shift D, it will go down in subdivision levels. And if you hit Command D, it will subdivide the model. So really, most of what you want to, you don't really want to do that willy-nilly. You can go up and down in subdivision levels non-destructively. All right, at the lowest subdivision level, you're going to want to create a displacement map. And this takes a little bit of time, and that's your map. And notice it lines up with the texture map because they're both based on the UVs. Okay, now we want to click Cinema 4D is open. Let me delete that. And we want to do Go Z. And that's it. That's your model. And when you render it, it has all the texture in there that you want. So if you wanted to modify this, you could let's say you wanted to do something like that. I just sculpted into the model. I could say create displacement map. Oops. Go down to the lowest subdivision level and say create displacement map. I'm just showing you how you get back and forth to Cinema 4D. And notice it did that. It went ahead and adjusted it. And so if we render it, it looks exactly like it does in ZBrush. Okay, so I'm going to undo that. I'm going to paint this over by saying fill with white. Now, I filled the model with white, but the reason you don't see it is this texture is still on. And when people tell you that ZBrush is a counterintuitive program, this is the kind of thing they're talking about. So if I turn the texture off, the color's not there. All right. Now we're ready to do the reprojection. We're going to do the reprojection at the lowest subdivision level first and then move higher. So let's do this. Go to our original Osiris model. I'm going to lower the color here so we can see what we're doing. And I'm going to isolate this bone. We've done this many, many times, but I lost it when this time I lost it when let me give it a little color. A faster way to do this, and I don't know why I'm not doing it, would be to go through under polygroups and say auto groups. And what it would do is it would go through and do that. And the only model we're really concerned with right now is the green one. So if we select just the green one, hide the red one. Okay, now what we're going to do is, yeah, that's what we want to do the projection on. And we want to hide this too. Oh, I should get that last little bit in there, shouldn't I? Genius, look at that. All right, so now I want this to be its own polygroup. I'm going to hit Control W. This would be a good time to do the save thing again. So let's do save as. That is saved. Can't hurt us anymore. Notice our whole model is still there. We just only need this model active at this time. Turn solo off. And now we have both of our models in the same place. You want to pick your new topology model. Make sure both are turned on. Well, actually, I want to hide that, don't I? Go back to your lasso select tool. Okay, all right, now we're ready to go, folks. I'm going to give that a new polygroup again. So if I need to get back there, I can. Oh, and we need to hide this. One of the things I noticed from the earlier time that I did this demo is that when I looked at the Osiris model, is that this is another piece of bone which is broken and we'd probably want to replace. And so if I look around here, it hinges right along that line. So I am going to hide it. And again, the color is making it difficult. There we go. Right? And all we're worried about here is the reprojection. That's it. All right. See these big holes in here, this medullary cavity in here? Do we want it to project in there? Yeah, maybe some, but it might cause more trouble than it's worth. So we'll have to see. All right, here we go. Turn both models on. Open the project dialog and do project all. And some areas may not work, okay, and we just have to, we'll give it a try, but we don't want intersecting polygons. See that nightmare in there? We don't want that. So if it continues to happen at the higher subdivision levels, we're going to exclude it from projection, and we're going to do that by masking. We're going to mask it out and say, you know what? Nice try, but don't reproject this. I'll just sculpt it by hand. That's basically what we're telling ZBrush when we mask something out. But some of this may not work because it just doesn't have enough topology. So now that we've done the first, we're still at the lowest subdivision level, right? We only have, oh no, we have multiple subdivision levels. Okay, so we're going to go up to our next subdivision level. which is, you could do it either way, it doesn't matter. But it's always good to start your projection at the lowest, then move up to the next, and then do your project again. And then you're going to march up from lowest to highest that way. And honestly, projection is one of those things where things go terribly, terribly wrong. So you want to inspect your model very, very carefully as you're doing it to make sure it's smooth and the polygonal groups look even. You don't have any intersecting polygons. That looks pretty good. Okay, so let's go through and do project all again. Both tools are on, and again we're projecting the retopologize tool onto our Osirix tool. That looks pretty hairy. Yeah. All right, I think this is probably going to be the limit of what we're going to be able to get out of this model. Because we're already, see these dots in here? That's artifact from the Osirix scan. So at a certain point we're going to have to go through and just sculpt the rest of this by hand to recapture the detail that we know is supposed to be there. Yeah, so this is probably about it for the Osirix data. But it's been, see this area in here? We could have, if we would have done the reproject with a big mask painted over that, it wouldn't have tried to reproject that area. But it smooths out really easily, and yeah, it doesn't really hurt us much to try it. Sometimes it will. You'll just have to get a feel for it. This is a pretty common reproject artifact, and it has to do with the thickness. It's projecting through to the other side. And so we're going to have to go through and resculpt all that by hand just by looking at it. So that's the sacral spine there, I think. And I think the real-world application of this is a good one, where you'd get a data set from a client, you'd make new topology for the bones, paint them, move them back into place, and you can always show them the Osirix data first, and then show them your animation of the cleaned up data and say, look, you can see where how they're based on real data. I just made a cleaner version so that it was easier to interpret. So one way to fix that area in the center might be to go to display properties, turn double off, and then flip the polygons. The highest subdivision level will be active. So let's go through here and do flip. And so now what we're doing is we're only seeing the back face of the polygon. So we can go through here and work on the medullary cavity in there that remained, which we probably don't need and should have gotten rid of in the earlier stages. But that looks pretty good. Does everybody understand what you're looking at? You're looking at the back side of all the polygons. So if they're facing you, they're being made transparent. And so we'll need to flip this back at the end. In fact, let's go ahead and do that. All right. So again, what we're doing now is we're going through and inspecting the model and making sure we don't have polygons that overlap. And then this is before we do any final sculpting. All right, I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, see all these dots in here, all that stuff, that's all artifact from the scan. That's probably smoother than that in life. But you get a lot of really nice planar information from the... Well, that's neither here nor there. Okay, so I think we're ready now to move these back into position. Right, so we've captured all the detail off this original Osirix scan that we possibly can. And I think the time has come for us to reassemble our pelvis, and I'm going to show you a trick for that, and that is, in the next demo, I'm going to go through and make a symmetrical pelvis It's going to be, is it going to be perfect? No, it's not going to be perfect, but it will give us a reference point for reassembling the pelvis. So in this movie, we covered UV Master and reprojection. And in the next one, we will make a symmetrical pelvis and then go through and reposition that one bone to be in the right place. Okay?